She was shamed and thrown out for looking too poor to buy a car. Next morning, her husband's Rolls Royce left the entire showroom stunned. Elena Ruiz wasn't the kind of woman people noticed when she walked into a room, and she liked it that way. Her world didn't revolve around attention or applause. It revolved around love, the kind that shows up at 3 a.m. with warm soup, holds a hand through endless hospital nights, and never stops hoping, even when doctors speak in low voices outside the room. She was only 36, but her eyes had seen enough worry for a lifetime. That morning, as she tied her hair into a loose bun and slipped into her worn sneakers, she glanced at the framed photo by the door. It was her husband, Miguel, smiling wide in a hospital gown just weeks after his heart transplant. He was alive, still recovering, still fragile, but alive. And that, to Elena, was the greatest miracle of her life. Today, she wanted to do something special, something for him, not out of duty, but from a place so deep even she couldn't fully explain it. While he slept peacefully upstairs, Elena quietly printed the bank documents, folded them neatly, and placed them in a weathered brown folder. She was going to the city's most prestigious car dealership, the one Miguel had once admired on TV during a quiet evening in the hospital. He had said it without thinking, in that soft voice filled with wonder. "That's the one. If I ever make it out of here, I'd love to ride in a car like that." He hadn't asked for it. He never would. But Elena remembered. She wasn't dressed in anything fancy. Just a simple sweater, the same jeans she wore to the grocery store, and a heart full of gratitude. As she stepped out of their modest home and into her aging sedan, she wasn't thinking about how she looked. She was thinking about how far they had come. Every scar on Miguel's chest, every quiet tear she had wiped away, every night she had whispered prayers into the dark, it all led to this day. She didn't know what was waiting for her at that dealership, but she carried the kind of strength no one could see, and a kind of love that would change everything. The luxury dealership stood like a glass palace at the corner of the street, all sharp lines and gleaming windows. Inside, cars rested on spotless marble floors like museum pieces, silent, polished, untouchable. Elena pulled into the parking lot in her old sedan, its engine humming softly before she turned it off. She took a deep breath, grabbed the folder from the passenger seat, and stepped out, smoothing down her sweater without thinking. She walked slowly, carefully, her eyes wide as she approached the entrance. Every corner of the place spoke of wealth, glossy walls, sleek chairs, and suits that cost more than her entire monthly budget. But Elena didn't flinch. Her purpose was clear. She was here to buy a gift that meant something, not just a car, but a dream Miguel never thought would come true. Inside, a young woman at the front desk gave her a distracted glance, then quickly looked away. Elena stood for a moment, unsure whether to wait or approach someone. A man in a tailored gray vest spotted her from across the floor. His name tag read, Brett, Sales Manager. He looked her up and down, slowly, and then started walking toward her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hi there," he said, keeping his tone light. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes," Elena replied softly, holding out her folder. "I'm interested in purchasing one of the Phantom models, the black one with the silver trim." Brett blinked as if the words didn't match the woman in front of him. "You want to purchase a Phantom?" he repeated, his voice more amused than curious. "Yes, for my husband," she added. "He's always wanted one. I have all the paperwork here." Brett didn't take the folder. Instead, he tilted his head slightly. "That's a $500,000 vehicle," he said, chuckling under his breath. "We usually require a consultation first. Maybe you'd be more comfortable starting with our pre-owned options?" Elena paused. "I'd like to discuss this model specifically," she said, her voice still calm, but now firmer. "I'm ready to begin the process today." Other sales staff had started to notice the exchange. One leaned over and whispered something to a colleague, both glancing at Elena. The glances turned into smirks. One customer, waiting with his iced coffee, looked her over and shook his head slightly. Brett sighed and finally reached for the folder. He opened it halfway, then closed it again. "Look," he said, quieter this time. "This place? It isn't for everyone. Maybe try somewhere less high-end? I don't want to waste your time." Elena blinked. For a second, she thought she'd misheard, but the heat rising in her chest confirmed she hadn't. She stood her ground, heart pounding but face steady. "I'm not here by mistake," she said. "I came for something important." But Brett was already turning away, shaking his head with a smirk. What Elena didn't know was that tomorrow this same floor would fall completely silent, not from the roar of an engine, but from a truth they weren't ready to face. Elena stood still, trying to steady her breath as Brett walked away, clearly uninterested. A few moments passed before he turned back around, hands in his pockets, and said, "All right, fine. You want to look at the Phantom? Let's go take a look then." His voice carried the tone of someone indulging a child's fantasy, not a customer's request. He led her across the floor toward the showroom section, where the Rolls Royce Phantom sat beneath a spotlight, shining like something out of a dream. Elena's eyes softened when she saw it. It was exactly the one Miguel had loved, the deep obsidian black with polished chrome lining and cream interior. She took a step closer, almost whispering, "This is the one." Brett stayed a few steps behind her, arms crossed, shifting his weight impatiently. "Beautiful, right?" he said. "That's why people come here to look. It's one thing to admire, another to actually buy." Elena turned to him, ignoring the sting behind his words. "Can I see the interior?" He raised an eyebrow. "We don't usually open the doors unless someone is pre-approved," he said casually. "But sure, why not?" He reached into his pocket, unlocked the car, and opened the driver's side door. Elena leaned in, breathing in the scent of new leather. Her hand brushed the steering wheel. She could already picture Miguel's face lighting up, his eyes wide, his smile spreading slowly like it always did when he was deeply moved. She stood upright and said, "I'd like to begin the paperwork today. I have everything ready." Brett laughed, a short, surprised sound that echoed through the quiet showroom. "You're serious?" he said, loud enough that two nearby employees turned to look. "You want to buy this car today? In cash?" "Yes," she answered, her voice calm. He walked back toward her, his face shifting from amusement to mild irritation. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice just low enough to sound polite but firm. "I'm not sure where you got this folder from, or why you think this is how luxury purchases work, but this isn't the kind of place where someone walks in off the street and buys $500,000 cars. We serve high-end clients, people with established financial portfolios, not—" He looked her up and down again. "Not people who come in wearing discount sneakers." The words hit harder than Elena expected. Her throat tightened, but she held her ground. "You don't know anything about me," she said softly. "No," he agreed, "but I don't have to. Look around. We work with business owners, celebrities, international investors. I've been doing this for years. I know who's serious and who's wasting time." A customer nearby raised an eyebrow. Another one subtly moved closer, pretending to browse while clearly listening. Brett sighed and waved toward the exit. "Look, I don't want to embarrass you, but I also don't want to involve security. You can leave now, or we can make this uncomfortable. It's up to you." The floor beneath Elena seemed to shift. For a second, she wondered if she should have dressed differently, spoken more firmly, brought someone with her. But the thought vanished just as quickly. She hadn't come here to prove herself to anyone. "I came here for my husband," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He nearly died 3 months ago. This car, was supposed to be a surprise, a gift for making it through. Brett blinked. His smirk faded, just for a second, but it came back. "That's touching," he said flatly. "Still doesn't change anything." More eyes were on her now, some pitiful, some confused. No one spoke up. She turned without another word, folder still in her hand, and walked toward the exit. Her heart ached, not because of the car, but because of the way she was looked at. Judged, dismissed, not for who she was, but for how she appeared. What no one saw was how heavy her love was. And tomorrow they would all see the weight of it arrive on 4 wheels, wrapped in quiet power. The house was quiet when Elena returned. The soft ticking of the kitchen clock and the gentle hum of the fridge filled the silence as she placed her folder back in the drawer without a word. Her shoes came off at the door, as always, and she moved carefully through the hallway, not wanting to wake Miguel from his afternoon nap. She found him on the living room couch, propped up with pillows, a light blanket over his legs. His chest rose and fell with the slow rhythm of healing. When he heard her footsteps, his eyes fluttered open, a small smile forming on his face. "You're back," he said softly, his voice still raspy from months of recovery. "Yeah," she replied with a small nod. "I just ran a few errands." He studied her face for a moment. "You okay?" Elena looked away, brushing imaginary dust from the coffee table. "I'm fine, just tired." But Miguel knew her too well. He slowly sat up, wincing a little, and patted the space beside him. "Sit. Tell me what happened." She hesitated, but then gave in. Sitting beside him, she leaned her head gently on his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "I went to that car dealership today, the one you liked. I wanted to surprise you." Miguel didn't speak. He waited. "They treated me like I didn't belong. The manager looked at me like I was some kind of joke. Told me to leave. He thought, because of how I was dressed, I didn't have the right to be there." There was a long pause. Miguel's hand found hers and held it tightly. "You went all the way there." "For me?" he asked. "I just wanted to see your face light up," she said, her voice cracking. "After everything you've been through, I thought maybe this one small thing could bring you joy." He took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the floor. Then, slowly, he looked at her with a steadiness that only came from surviving the unthinkable. "I'm not upset that you went," he said. "I'm upset that someone thought they could treat you that way and walk away from it." Elena didn't answer. She didn't need to. In that quiet moment, something passed between them, stronger than anger, deeper than hurt. Tomorrow would come. And so would the lesson. The morning sun hit the pavement just right as the dealership opened its tall glass doors to another day of shiny cars and polished sales pitches. Employees adjusted their ties, wiped dustless surfaces, and got ready for another round of high-end clients. Brett was already at his desk, sipping an iced coffee and scrolling through his phone, looking completely at ease. No one noticed the quiet hum of an approaching engine at first, but when a sleek black Rolls Royce Phantom pulled into the parking lot, its body shining like a mirror under the California sun, heads began to turn. The car came to a slow, elegant stop right outside the main entrance. Every movement was smooth, precise, like it belonged in that space without asking permission. Inside, Brett stood up, suddenly alert. "That's one of ours," he muttered, confused. He wasn't expecting a test drive or delivery. Other staff members stepped forward, craning their necks to see who would step out of a car that expensive. Then the back door opened. Miguel Ruiz stepped out, dressed in a navy blue blazer, crisp white shirt, dark slacks, and polished leather shoes. He moved slowly, carefully, his recovery still in progress, but with a quiet confidence that needed no announcement. His presence was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He looked around, taking in every detail, every glance, every whisper. The room seemed to still as he walked inside, the glass doors parting like the place was made for him. "Good morning," he said clearly, his voice firm yet respectful. Brett approached, putting on his best customer service smile. "Welcome, sir. How can I assist you today?" Miguel didn't return the smile. He reached into his blazer, pulled out a folded slip of paper, and handed it to Brett. "Are you the one who spoke to this woman yesterday?" Brett glanced at the name on the paper, Elena Ruiz. He paused. "I might have. I speak with a lot of customers." "That woman is my wife," Miguel said, his voice now low and direct. "She came here yesterday to surprise me with something beautiful, and she walked away, humiliated." A few gasps echoed quietly from nearby desks. One young female employee stepped back, recognizing Elena's name from the previous day. Brett's smile vanished, replaced by a tight jaw and visible discomfort. "I wasn't aware," he started. "That's the point," Miguel interrupted. "You didn't care to be aware." Silence filled the room. Even the music playing softly from the speakers seemed to fade into the background. "My wife doesn't wear designer shoes or carry luxury handbags. She doesn't need to. What she carries is love, real love, the kind that sat beside me every night in the hospital while machines kept me alive, the kind that remembers the small things I once said in passing, the kind that walks into a place like this, not to impress anyone, but to give something meaningful." No one moved. She didn't ask for attention. She didn't try to prove herself. And yet she was judged, dismissed, because someone didn't like how she looked, because someone thought she didn't belong. Miguel took a breath, his hand resting gently on the polished counter. "You judged the outside," he continued. "But what was inside her, that's worth more than every car in this building combined." Not a word was spoken. And just like that, the quiet strength of a man who had seen death and come back left the entire showroom looking smaller than it did the day before. Brett's hands twitched slightly as he tried to form words, but nothing came out that didn't sound hollow. The weight of Miguel's voice had settled over the showroom like a fog, and no amount of polished charm could cut through it. For once, the man who always had something clever to say stood completely still, his confidence gone, replaced by something unfamiliar. Shame. One of the junior associates, a woman named Tara, stepped forward from behind her desk. She had witnessed the entire exchange the day before, though she hadn't said a word. She had seen Elena's quiet smile, her respectful tone, and the way she clutched that folder like it held something precious. And she had watched Brett wave her off like she was nothing. "I remember her," Tara said quietly, breaking the silence. She wasn't rude. She didn't raise her voice. She just wanted to surprise someone she loved. Miguel turned to look at her, his expression softening slightly. "She reminded me of my mom," Tara continued, her voice growing steadier. "Simple, kind, never looking for attention, and still treated like she didn't belong." The dealership's general manager, Mr. Langford, had entered quietly moments earlier after being alerted by staff. He now stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room, landing first on Brett, then on Miguel. "Mr. Ruiz," he began cautiously, "I'm truly sorry. If I'd known what happened, Miguel raised a hand gently to stop him. "It's not about who I am. It never was. That's the part that hurts the most." Langford looked away, clearly unsettled. Brett stood motionless, his face pale. "She didn't need to be connected to me for basic respect," Miguel added. "She deserved that on her own." Miguel's voice never rose. He didn't threaten, didn't demand compensation. That made it cut deeper. It wasn't anger that filled the room. It was disappointment, a quiet kind that lingered longer than rage ever could. Tara took a small step forward again. "Mr. Ruiz, Your wife told me something as she left yesterday. She said she wasn't there by mistake, that she came for something important. I didn't understand it then, but I do now." Miguel nodded slowly. "She came for love, and left with nothing but humiliation." Langford looked toward Brett, who still hadn't spoken. "You should say something." Brett swallowed hard. I made a mistake," he said. I thought she was pretending. People come in here sometimes just to browse, to act like they can afford things they can't. I thought she was one of them." Miguel's gaze didn't waver. "You didn't think she was pretending. You decided she wasn't worth your time. That's different." The words hit hard. Everyone in the room felt it. "She's at home right now," Miguel continued, "thinking she failed to do something kind. She feels small because of what happened here." Langford cleared his throat. "Mr. Ruiz, please give us the chance to make this right." Miguel shook his head gently. "You don't need to make it right with me. You need to make it right with the next woman who walks in looking like she doesn't belong. Because maybe she's a mother or a nurse, or the reason someone like me is even alive." No one said a word. Sometimes silence is the sound of people realizing they were wrong. And in that moment, everyone at the dealership knew this wasn't just a lesson about one woman. It was a lesson about all the things they'd never bothered to see. Mr. Langford asked Miguel to step into his office, away from the eyes now filled with guilt and realization. But Miguel declined politely. "Whatever needs to be said, it should be said where everyone can hear it," he replied. His tone was still calm, but every word held weight. "I'm not here for apologies," he continued, looking around the room. "What happened yesterday wasn't about one person having a bad day. It was about a culture that decides someone's worth by their shoes, their clothes, or the bag they carry. That needs to change." Langford nodded slowly, his pride stripped away. "You're right. We failed her. We failed you. And we failed our own values." He turned to the staff. "Starting today, we're setting new expectations. Kindness is non-negotiable. Respect is non-negotiable. And no one gets to decide who belongs and who doesn't, based on looks." Miguel looked toward Tara. "I hope people like you are the future of this place," he said softly. "People who see hearts, not handbags." Tara's eyes welled up, but she smiled with quiet pride. Brett stood off to the side, his arms stiff at his sides. He didn't speak again. Langford addressed him directly. "You're being removed from all customer-facing roles effective immediately. Whether you stay with this company will depend on whether you learn from this, not just cover it up." Miguel gave a small nod, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "This is the foundation my wife is starting," he said. "It's for people like her, people who give everything, expect nothing, and are often treated like they don't matter. Maybe your staff could learn something from them." Langford took the card carefully. "We'll reach out, and we'll do better." With that, Miguel turned and walked out the same glass doors his wife had walked through just a day earlier. Only this time, no one looked away. They watched him leave with the same quiet respect they had denied her. He stepped back into the Rolls Royce and closed the door behind him, not in victory, not in pride, but in love. And in the silence that followed, the people inside knew that something had changed, something that went far beyond luxury cars. 3 weeks later, the dealership looked the same on the outside: shiny floors, spotless glass, and high-end cars parked like trophies. But inside, something had shifted. A new notice board near the entrance now displayed a bold message: "People first, always." And below it, a quiet flyer introducing a new partnership with a local community foundation, founded by Elena Ruiz. Elena hadn't returned to the dealership since that day. She never asked for a formal apology. She never needed one. But when Mr. Langford reached out, asking if she would be open to leading a staff session on empathy and human dignity, she said yes. Not because she wanted to be seen, but because she wanted others to be seen. That Saturday morning, Elena stood in front of the dealership's staff, not in a designer dress, not with any air of superiority, but in a plain blouse and soft smile, just like the first time. Only this time, the room listened. She didn't speak about money. She spoke about moments, sitting by her husband's bedside, holding his hand while waiting for doctors to come in with news that could change everything. She spoke about how little appearances mattered in those moments, how love doesn't wear labels, and how no one should ever have to prove their worth just to be treated with basic decency. Brett sat in the back, quiet, notebook open. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. Something in his expression had changed, not guilt, not shame, but reflection. That was enough for Elena. Tara approached her afterward with a warm smile and said, "We've started doing things differently here. Your story opened something in all of us." Elena nodded. "That means more than you know." Outside, Miguel waited in the same Rolls Royce, window down, watching her with the same admiration he had carried since the day they met. As she got in, he reached for her hand. "How'd it go?" he asked. She looked out the window at the dealership behind them. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it's trying. And that's where change begins." They drove off slowly, passing the same spot where she had once stood alone, holding a folder and a quiet hope. Now she carried something far greater, proof that one soft voice, when used with purpose, could open even the hardest doors. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories like this. And before you go, check out the other videos appearing on your screen right now. You won't want to miss them.